you're basically responding to people like Musa Al-Gharbi, who wrote a quite influential article. I think it was titled something like "Wokeness is Winding Down." Then there was a follow-up article in The Economist, which made some quite similar arguments, drawing on similar data sets. And there was also a piece in the New York Times, which was interpreted as supporting that same line of argument. But you dispute all three articles.
Well, look at the Economist data. If you look at the charts, they say, wow, wokeism is going away. There's a barely perceptible dip in like the use of certain social justice jargon and in newspapers. Now, I'm not saying that's not real, but it's more like a leveling off, a kind of, okay, we won where we can focus on some other things. I, I don't, it doesn't, there's no indication in the Economist data that uh, society as a whole has abandoned its commitment to the project of wokeism, which is striving for equal outcomes among groups.
Okay, so before we get to the nitty-gritty of the evidence, which is quite interesting because you make a number of very interesting points in your article, what you draw an analogy with early Christianity, or not that early, but Christianity in the year 1101 or whatever.
101.
Yeah. Can you explain that analogy?
Uh, so in the year 1101, I could have written an article very much like the one in The Economist with a bunch of graphs proving that Christianity had peaked in the year 1099. Uh, and I would show that the number of killings perpetrated in the name of Christianity had fallen very dramatically just last year. And the number of swords with cruciform hilts being bought had also decreased sharply. And I did a survey of uh, of of Europeans aged 18 to 65, and the percentage who said it's very important to wage holy war for Christianity had gone down a bit since its historic high in 1095. So see, uh, uh, I've proved I have the data on my side. Christianity is so nothing to worry about. I would say before being executed, right? Um, Now, what was the problem with that argument is that I'm not considering the bigger context, which is that from 1096 to 99, there were the Crusades. There was a war, and the Christian fundamentalists won the war. And they established their hegemony for the next, 400 years. So I, I, I certainly agree that these discussions should be informed by data. I'm not against the data, but you have to interpret it. The data don't by themselves don't necessarily tell the story.
Yeah, so one of the types of data that Al-Gharbi and The Economist mention is data related to what corporations are doing in respect of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And there seems to be some evidence that investments in that bureaucratic infrastructure have either stalled or have reduced, and the number of people employed in those roles may be going down as well. But you don't think this is a strong indicator of being past peak woke and being on a downward trajectory?
Yeah, we don't need people like this anymore because why do we need DEI enforcers? Everybody's enforcing DEI. Every authority figure knows that their job is to enforce DEI. As I say in the art, it's why don't
But
we hire people to enforce the ideology that women have the right to vote, or you shouldn't sacrifice your children to Baal? Like we don't need people to do that.
well, some people would say that DI was always a kind of jobs program for graduates of, critical race theory programs who are disproportionately of certain ethnic groups. And the fact that they're cutting back on those is therefore a loss to the diet promoting segment of the population.
I mean, the like all movements, wokeism attracts parasites who are just trying to get something out of it for themselves. So, I mean, a lot of the DEI industry was serving that purpose.
Mm.
Uh, Now, the fact that some of the parasites have been expunged doesn't necessarily tell us about the the condition of the host, which is the ideology itself. Maybe the ideology has found a way to remove these people, but without actually suffering itself.
Yeah. But what would it mean in a workplace for the ideology of diversity, equity, and inclusion to be promoted without a large infrastructure?
Well, and I mean, in the UK, there's less of an infrastructure, much less of a DEI infrastructure than there is in the US, but they still enforce DEI, right? Universities and
No, yeah,
other such places.
I'm thinking of private corporations.
I mean, that's just an example of how wokeism um, can rule the society even without some of this infrastructure. But now, okay, so the fact that we had the infrastructure and we got rid of it, what are the implications? I mean, maybe on the margin, it's better not to have a dedicated DEI officer. That's probably true. But, uh, you know, it's not, does that mean that the ideology has been rejected, that the ideology isn't being enforced, that that these places are going to hire someone like James Damore or us? Like, uh, I don't think so. Not it doesn't necessarily mean that.